Cities are the basis of civilization. The word civilization itself comes indirectly from the Latin civitas, which means city. Settlements began when farming became an important part of human subsistence, providing an alternative for the calories and nutrients that people got from the arduous task of hunting. Thousands of years of development and destruction have led us to today, when it's estimated that 4.4 billion people live in urban areas, about 50% of the world's population. These days, cities are at the center of almost every aspect of life. Politics, science, education, sport, entertainment, leisure, consumerism, and art all thrive and die in metropolises, changing with the times, rising and falling in popularity as they are shared, enjoyed, and criticized by the masses living in close quarters. Even in my time, there have been radical changes in urbanization, with the incredible rise of cities in East and Southeast Asia and the Middle East, leading the way in their government's visions of urban sprawl and population reconfiguration. I was born and bred in Portsmouth. It's not one of the premier cities in the UK, but it is one of the most densely populated and has seen its fair share of changes over the years, many of them for the worst. I'm a city boy at heart, and as much as I value the countryside and what it does for us, I don't think I could ever live in such quiet isolation. I need noise outside. I need well-lit streets. I need to be able to walk to the shops, the pub, or the coffee shop. I don't want to rely on a car. I don't want to have to make a trip just to see my friends and family. I like to have things close by, even if I have to give up some peace and quiet and a bit of fresh air for the privilege. This extends to my travel preferences. When I travel to cities and I spend my time enjoying the urban environment. I'm not just talking about short city breaks for a quick bit of cultural enrichment or a couple of days of hair loosening partying. I'm talking about a full 2 weeks of exploring streets and skylines, museums and markets, galleries and gastronomy. I've never in my life taken a relaxing beach holiday. As a child, we didn't have much money and only ever had one foreign holiday to Italy. The rest were a couple of trips to Wales and numerous day trips to local historic cities and landmarks. I've been a cub and a scout, so I've done some camping and hiking, including a couple of horse riding sessions in Dartmoor during a hailstorm. While I had fun, I never really connected with nature, so when I started earning my own money, I spent it on trips to cities, both historic and modern. So, what is it about cities that I love so much? Why do I only go to them and never a beach, a log cabin in the woods, or a hotel in the middle of the savannah, surrounded by curious wild animals and dangerous predators? I think it all stems from my love of history. If I had had more courage, I would have done a degree in archaeology, rather than the applied psychology and computing I eventually chose. I was always fascinated by the lives of English kings and queens, their battles, their intrigues, their rises and their downfalls. Castles and palaces fascinated me, and even in the nascent days of Anglo-Saxon England, these stories were centered around urban spaces, walled towns of timber and stone buildings and narrow streets where people lived lives of varying degrees of hardship. Throughout the world, these small towns of disease and dirt-filled streets became the gleaming metropolises we marvel at today. London, Paris, Rome, Moscow, Beijing, Tokyo, Jerusalem, New York, Mumbai, and thousands of others. The history of humanity is intrinsically linked to the history of urban development. Power was traditionally centered in the walled dominions of lords and dukes who gave fealty to their regal masters in the much larger capitals. But even then, the kings had to fight over the centuries to secure their positions against often annoyingly rebellious nobles. These are the tales that fascinated me as a child, and visiting these places to walk the streets where these events happened always gives me a sense of awe and foreboding. Sometimes it's hard to imagine how events of such immense impact and brutality could have happened in streets so peaceful and aesthetically pleasing. But happen they did, and blood was shed, and history was made. Sometimes you can still see the scars, sometimes they have been erased, but the stories have been preserved, and we can stand on the spots where the world changed and lives were turned upside down, sometimes for the best, sometimes for the worst. Architecture is the lens through which a city is seen by the world. It is the face it shows, whether made up for a night out or looking scruffy in the morning. Architecture is the most visible teller of a city's history, from its oldest foundation to its most modern facades. Architecture tells stories of changing trends and scientific breakthroughs. It shows how polity changed its priorities, from glorifying deities through the expression of the finest artistic beauty, to marveling at unimaginable scientific breakthroughs, to benefiting from the engineering applications of impenetrable theories. For centuries, religion was the glue that held people together through wars and plagues, revolutions and restorations. Cathedrals and temples linked communities through networks of beliefs, and even a hardened atheist like me can still marvel at the devotion behind the wonders they created. For me, Gothic is the ultimate architectural form, allowing medieval architects to design structures of stone that have survived disease, natural disasters, fire, and bombs. It's not just the might of the vaulted arches that impress me, it's also the tiny details and figures mounted so high that no one on the ground could see them. It didn't make them any less important than anything at eye level, but it's something no architect of today would even bother with. Eventually, secular government took over. Palaces and parliaments would become the focus of national life. Local and national administration became the prime concern of the citizenry, and today we see the importance societies gave to their rulers in the grand structures for monarchs, presidents, dictators, representatives, and bureaucrats. For most of recorded history, education was reserved for the ruling and religious class, but at various times around the world, institutions were set up to expand expertise across the citizenry, sometimes to maintain the status quo, other times to increase opportunity through meritocracy. Some places focused on administration, while others tended towards divinity, but all eventually coalesced around art, science, and engineering, where graduates took the ideas they had studied and applied them in the expanding world. As a result, cultural institutions provide a lifeline for many cities, whether it be through endowments for research or bringing in that juicy tourism money. Museums and galleries tell the nebulous stories of humanity's development and achievements and are often the main reason for people visiting a particular metropolis. Art, science, nature, and engineering have now become a part of the leisure and entertainment infrastructure, and no city could ever claim to be in the big leagues without significant centres for public exhibitions. They don't have to hold works by the great masters, nor describe events with global implications, nor even describe advances that changed humanity and history, but they need to educate and elaborate all visitors, both local and foreign. These days, business reigns supreme. Commerce and industry drive everything from how much people can spend to what can be built. Skyscrapers tell their own stories about the strength and ambition of a city, and skylines act like hairstyles with wavy, inverted fringes or short, flat levels. High rise is not for everyone, but in modern times it has become the de facto aspiration of every city with ambitions of visibility in an increasingly crowded urban world. Most are boring and ugly, and many are utterly pointless, beyond showing off how much money a business leader or ruler has to spend. But some have value, though, and these are the ones that people gravitate to. The Empire State Building, the Gherkin, the Willis Tower, the Commerzbank Tower. Used to be temples and churches that demonstrated a city's importance. Now it's office spaces as altars to money. Transport is what makes a city function. Roads may be old and narrow, but every authority spends endless hours trying to solve traffic problems to get people and things from A to B as quickly as possible. Wide boulevards and sprawling motorways allow inefficient cars to pass through as easily as possible, which in some cases is not very easy at all. But the bigger the city, the bigger the problem, and the bigger the opportunity. Metropolitan transportation can be a tourist trap in and of itself. The London Underground, the Paris Metro, and the New York Subway are rites of passage for the keen city traveller, and many more cities of varying sizes have dug tunnels and constructed viaducts to open up all sorts of areas of a city to anyone who visits or makes it their home. Without these, many cultural treasures may have been left to rot, and many districts would have fallen by the wayside, forgotten by governments too focused on the centre to worry about the edges. These can often be the most interesting places to visit, where no one worries about putting on a show for outsiders and are sometimes even resentful. Cities connect with each other by road and rail, allowing visitors to explore beyond the confines of the locality they arrive at. Small towns and regional cities can be as interesting and fulfilling as a major capital, and even rural and natural areas can benefit from such easy communication, though many also feel very differently. Seaports and airports connect cities across the world. It's possible to get between any two major cities in any country within a day by air, where in the lifetime of millions of people, it once took weeks by sea. There are many downsides for sure. Pollution and climate change have been accelerated by transportation, but the exchange of ideas, technologies, cultures, and currency have benefited millions of people too. Leisure and consumerism are now the prime focus of the masses. Cinema, shopping, live music, and sport dominate people's free time and vacuum up the spare cash. Shopping malls, multiplexes, Theatres, arenas, and stadiums bring people together for the sole purpose of consumption of product and distraction from the day to day grind. So important is it that governments will hand over billions of taxpayers' money to fund these palaces. People travel hundreds of miles to watch their favourite sports team or shop on their favourite fashionable avenue, sometimes even crossing continents. Spending money on the trinkets and experiences money can buy is very much a modern trend, and one that needs endless feeding in a constant cycle of decay and renewal. The pleasure is real at the time, and millions of people get to see new and fascinating places as a welcome consequence of watching their favourite team lose or maxing out their credit card in their most desired boutique. One thing that's more intrinsically linked to places than anything is food. While cuisine is not an urban invention, it's in the cities where it was perfected. Food is often part of the identity of a nation. Pizza, sushi, fish and chips, curry, hot pot, hamburgers, paella all invoke images specific to countries, and sometimes the cities from where they originate. Think of instant noodles in Osaka or Wiener Schnitzel from Vienna. For me, a travel experience is never complete without trying local delicacies, especially when they are strange and make my friends and family groan with disgust. These are the things that make travelling to cities my travel passion. I love their craziness, their beauty and their ugliness. I love the smells of spices and smog, the noise of traffic and languages I cannot comprehend. I love the facades of history and modernity, of technology and nature. I love the monuments to power, faith and conflict, in all their gory glory and expensive excess. I love to see how people live, work and have fun, and how differently they are from the reality I know. Cities, in my view, are the best places to be.